Hello everyone. I hope that you're all doing well, and welcome to the ASMR Study Corner. This is really nice to finally be here, and today I'm going to be reading a bit from the introduction to the DD 103 course. But first I am going to be talking about the channel, who I am, why we're here, and what we're going to be covering, what I'm doing. So if you are here just for the reading of DD 103 Introduction, Investigating the Social World, then I will leave a timestamp in the description, so you can just skip straight to that. But if you are, like me, curious, then please do stick around and I'll explain what it is that I'm actually doing here. Okay, I'm gonna try and keep this nice and short and sweet, but I am also gonna ramble about myself a little bit, so you'll have to bear with me on that one. So I think to begin with, we'll talk about ASMR, and I have been watching ASMR for almost 10 years now. Basically every day. It's become somewhat of a cornerstone of my life. ASMR is what has ultimately led me to study psychology in university. So if it wasn't for ASMR, I wouldn't be here, and you wouldn't be here either, I imagine. But yeah, I've always really kind of wanted to start my own channel, since maybe like 2013, 2014. It's been an aspiration of mine, but it's not been something that I've ever achieved. I got this Blue Yeti mic for Christmas so many years ago, and it's seen the light of day many times, but none of the content I've ever created with it has. But I keep coming back to it, and when I decided that I was going to start this course, I figured there was no better opportunity to make the most out of this microphone than this. So ASMR Study Corner was born. What we're going to be doing here is I'm going to be reading materials to you. I'm going to be basically covering everything that I'm learning in my course, things like that as we go through it. I think when it comes down to assessments and stuff like that, obviously I'm not going to be able to share my content about my assessment, but all of the course materials and stuff like that, and topics and things that we can discuss, have some rambles about, and have an open conversation in the comment section as well. So hopefully that will come to fruition. Another thing that I want to say is I have learned so much through ASMR. My kitten is coming to say hello. I've learned so much through ASMR. The way that I learn, I find it really, she's gonna play with the mic, I'm sorry. Yeah, the way that I learn, I find it really helpful to have some audio to listen to, and I can just do my housework or play a game, absent-mindedly play a game or something like that, and I can just listen to the music and have something else to do in the meantime. Sorry, she's brushing against the mic. You know, I started in 2020. I started listening to ASMR. What's he called? French Whisperer. He does a lot of historical videos teaching us about all sorts of different things, but mostly the history of the world. While I was playing Assassin's Creed Odyssey, and I took in a lot of information from him, and I thought I think he's really onto something. This is a really good way of learning. A lot of learning is all about reading, but I find that my mind wanders so easily when I'm reading, and I find myself kind of like, I don't want to say disassociating, but zoning out, and I don't remember like a lot of the text that's on the page, whereas having it laid out like this, with someone maybe softly speaking or whispering, I can put some like relaxing sounds on in the background if you like, rain sounds or something like that. Just it's a nice place to just chill out and have the information fed to you, while you can also do other tasks and focus on the audio at the same time. So I'm really hoping that that's what we can create here. I am being observed by my cat right now, and she keeps pouncing on the wire of my earphones. But right, okay, so I think that just about does it for the kind of introduction to the channel and what we're going to be covering here. As I said, I'm studying psychology with counselling, so it's going to be psychology based. But to begin with, I got to pick between two opening courses, and the one that I chose was DD 103, which is Investigating the Social World. It's very social sciences based from what I can gather. It's just about understanding our world and asking and discussing questions with regards to social sciences. So hopefully you will find it, and I will find it interesting. I'm going to begin by reading the introduction now, and I will start then with Investigating the Social World 1 in probably another video at this point, because we're at 8 minutes already. So let us dive in. Let's skip past the contents. Here is an introduction to the introduction. Welcome to DD 103, Investigating the Social World. Hopefully you will already have had a look around the module website and read Quick Start Guide. If you haven't done this yet, then you should do this now. This book is for the first of 3 that you will use on the module, alongside a range of material on the module website, including DD 103 Study Planner, which will guide your progress through the range of study materials. To begin with section 1 of this book, it highlights some of the basic but essential study skills to get you off to a good start on the module. Each of the sections that follow will form a part of your study material for the 3 weeks of Block 1. Section 2 will support your study of Week 1 of the module, with a particular focus on getting to grips with the module theme of inequality. Section 3 supports Week 2 and provides further guidance on the module theme of rights, while Section 4 supports Week 3 and the module theme of justice. Section 5 provides a summary of the themes as well as an outline of the different social science disciplines you will be introduced to in Block 2. We hope that you find studying DD 103 an interesting, challenging, rewarding and ultimately enjoyable experience, as we wish you all the best for your journey ahead. Okay. Number 1 is getting ready to study. In order to prepare effectively for DD 103 and any other module, it is always helpful to think about where, when, and how you will study. This includes finding a suitable space in which to study, thinking about what time you have available. My cat is standing in front of the book. Come on, Toast. Down you go. Good girl. Sorry. And this includes finding a suitable space in which to study, thinking about what time you have available to study in your weekly schedule, and having a sense of the structure of the module and the points at which you'll be required to write and submit assignments. It's always important to begin with a clear sense of what lies ahead and the commitment involved in studying the module. It is recommended that you aim to study for 15 hours per week, but other demands may mean that you will not always be able to dedicate this much time in a week. This should not be a problem in the short term, but if you do find yourself falling behind, don't worry. Simply contact your tutor who will advise you on how to best get back on track. Most Open University students have multiple demands on their time, so it can be difficult to fit studying around other commitments to begin with, but establishing a routine and creating a study-friendly environment will equip you for success. The ability to recognise and reflect upon the skills you already have, as well as those you would like to gain and develop further, is an important and personal and professional skill. Whether you have studied a previous Open University module, or if you're completely new to OU study, there will be skills developed through your daily life that you can usefully bring to your studies. These could be skills used at home, in your working life, in hobbies you may have, or in any volunteering work you might do. Below are a few suggestions of the kind of skills you might already use in your daily life. Spend a few minutes thinking about the skills you use in your everyday life and how they might link to your studies, and note some examples. Activities for which you have to plan, making time and space for these while balancing them with other commitments in your life. Moments when reflecting on what you have done has been helpful in terms of improving things for the future. Occasions where you have accessed information from different sources or in different formats. Times when you have had to understand an argument made by others, perhaps you have had to consider the strengths and weaknesses of the argument. Everyone has had to plan and make space for various things in their lives. Think, for example, about planning and organising social activities, remembering friends and family's birthdays and anniversaries, organising dentists and doctor's appointments, or remembering to renew your car's MOT. If you have caring responsibilities for children or elderly relatives, you'll be planning in this way much of the time. These skills will be important in planning your study time too. Reflecting on your development in a formal way may be something you do through appraisals at work. More informally, we often reflect upon how we might do things differently, usually when something has not gone as well as you'd hoped. For example, a holiday or trip that wasn't organised very well, or a failed driving test, or even a conversation with a friend where you wish you had behaved differently. These skills will be more important when reflecting on feedback from your tutor and using it to improve your work. Think, for example, about finding information about where to go on holiday. Do you consult travel brochures, go on the internet, ask your friends for advice, or go to a travel agency? Alternatively, how you find out about some of the cheapest insurance deals. Do you go online to a comparison website, telephone a number of companies, or compare the publicity that comes through the letterbox? You might also access information through a range of formats such as diagrams and graphs, school or hospital league tables or reports, whether on a child's school progress or a football match. These skills will be important when thinking about which material to select and use when planning your assignments. Of all the sets of skills in the module, this is the one that involves more specialist understanding. Nevertheless, there will be areas of everyday life where you are already engaging with these skills in some way. Perhaps you have had to weigh up the pros and cons of medical advice that you've been given, or you may have listened to the political arguments on the radio or television and decided whether you agree with them or not. When thinking about studying this module, did you listen to the advice of friends and family, or perhaps OU tutors and advisors? How did you consider the various costs and benefits of OU study? These skills will be important when thinking about and evaluating social science arguments, something that you'll be doing later on in this module. Study skills, time management. Of all the skills we've touched on above, time management is one that is key to academic success. It is something that you probably do on a day-to-day basis. So while this means something specific in the case of your studies, the basic skill is once more one that you already have. The first step in managing your study time is to ensure that you know what the module comprises, and to familiarise yourself with the structure of study for the module. When the assignments are due, the study planner on this module website is a place to start for this. The next step is to plan your study time. Some people prefer to study little and often, others to work for longer periods of time less often. Where you do your studies can be just as important as the amount of time you spend on them. The space you have available to study will depend on your own circumstances. Whether you have a place at home or somewhere else, try to make sure that you can easily access your study materials. No matter how effectively you plan and manage your time, there will always be some distractions. Distractions that can be unavoidable, such as a child needing your attention, but there can also be displacement activities or ways of procrastinating in disguise. Some people say that they need the pressure of a tight deadline to get on with, say, writing the assignment. Ask yourself whether this way of working is really effective or whether it is disguised as procrastination. You might find you produce better work under less stressful conditions. Below is a checklist of some of the effective strategies for dealing with distractions. You may use some of them already. Set realistic goals for your study session, e.g., I'll read this section or work for 40 minutes before I make that coffee. Aim to minimize possible interruptions, putting your answer phone or asking friends not to disturb you. Remember that it is best to try and have short-term deadlines that you can stick to rather than more ambitious long-term goals that might be hard to meet. Try not to feel that you need to produce the perfect assignment every time. Sometimes distractions will be significant and come at just the wrong time. Avoid taking on too many commitments. Learn to politely say no. Do a deal with yourself. Okay, I'll go out with my friends tonight, but this means that I'll need to get up early on Sunday to study instead. Just do it. You may find that the task doesn't take as long as you expected and you'll feel much better for getting it out of the way. We hope that this has raised your awareness of the skills that you already use in your life outside of the OU and that this has given you confidence to start this module. Don't worry if the skills you are bringing to the module are fairly unequal, as everyone has greater strengths in some areas and more than in others. Being honest about these areas and the ones that perhaps need further development is one part of the reflective process. Now I'm going to go on to 2, investigating money, introducing the theme of inequality. The familiar phrase, money makes the world go round, helps to emphasize why the topic of money is useful for investigating the social world in which we live, since it links to so many areas of the social life. Perhaps most familiar context for thinking about money concerns economic processes, but we can also think about the way money has social effects through the ways it is distributed. Money is subject to regulation and taxation. This has moral implications in relation to whether money is seen as legitimate or immoral, or even criminal in different contexts. The movement of money around the globe connects different geographical areas while forming barriers between others. It affects the ability of people to move around and the resources available to them. There are also impacts on the environment. Think, for example, of the amount of air travel or level of electricity consumption in the wealthier parts of the world. Money is also political. It can have significant influence on a national and international relationship. So why study money? Money is something we're all familiar with in our everyday lives and relationships. Its significance and diversity is what makes the role of money so useful for investigating the social world. Even where the use of money might seem less significant on a day-to-day basis, such as in Amazonian forest-dwelling communities, people are affected by logging corporations and migrant workers making money by exploiting and developing the forest environment. Bear with me. Okay, I'm back, sorry. Forest-dwelling communities often also need money to access legal support and action to protect their livelihoods or to access health or educational services, which many such groups want or need at least one or at least some of the time. So studying money can help us to ask questions and build evidence about the ways in which people's social, economical, political and environmental lives are organised, directly or indirectly in relation to money. However, there are some potential disadvantages as well as advantages to studying money. It is also part and parcel of social science study that we should be mindful of potential challenges in studying money. A common challenge in social science is being familiar with a particular topic such as money. For example, we may feel personally attached to or affected by money, so we need to be aware that this might have a bearing on our investigation work. Recognizing that we have particular views should prompt us to ask how such views might affect the questions we pose or the conclusions we draw. This is a useful reminder that while we are studying something familiar to us, we are doing so in the context of social science investigation, and that we need to adopt a particular systemic approach. We do this here by developing the use of the social sciences investigative toolkit throughout the module. The theme of inequality. As the module introduction outlines, as well as exploring different topics, we will use different themes on DD 103. Block 1 introduces you to each of the 3 themes of inequality, rights and justice, providing you with both an overview of their differences and also the ways they connect to each other. Each of the themes can be thought of as a sort of lens through which we can view a particular topic, such as money. In this sense, each of the themes provides us with a view of things from a particular perspective, but these different views also connect together within the bigger picture of what we are calling the social world. In this section, we focus on the theme of inequality. So what is inequality and why does it matter? In this section, we consider different types of inequality and why they might matter. We'll also consider where inequality arises and who it affects, as well as the changing nature of inequalities between different places and over periods of time. We'll also consider the contested nature of inequality and the argument that inequality might be inevitable or even desirable in some cases. So activity 1 is think about some of the different types of inequality you're familiar with. Jot down some of your thoughts on this. How far do you think inequality matters to society and in what ways? And the discussion for this is, you might have first considered inequalities related to money. Some of these examples could be income inequality, wealth inequality, and also perhaps international inequalities related to the average personal incomes. Or to trade and investment, you may also have considered inequalities less directly associated with money, such as inequalities between different places, e.g. towns and cities, in different regions or at different times, in the present day compared to 50 or 100 years ago. Political, educational or health inequality may have also occurred to you. Perhaps inequalities of knowledge, such as those who have access to and knowledge of information technology compared to those who don't. You might have also thought about inequalities based on social differences, such as gender, disability, class or ethnicity, and perhaps inequalities of environmental threats and or exposure to conflict. I don't know about you, but my first thought went to sexuality. How do social scientists view inequalities? Social scientists are interested in studying the patterns and processes of inequalities. This highlights that the inequalities are not necessarily fixed or simply given in a particular situation. Rather, inequalities change and are actively or inadvertently produced in many everyday contexts. Similarly, actions also take place to reduce inequality, most obviously through examples of change in social policy, such as same-sex marriage equality. How far such inequalities are seen as important is often debated in the media. Political debate is commonly characterized by claims, justifications, or concerns about inequalities. The nature and effects of such debates are also of interest to social sciences. There are also extensive consideration of how different types of inequalities overlap. For example, how money is or is not invested may connect with inequalities in educational provision, healthcare, or development of the transport infrastructure. I do want to apologise. I have boxes in my hallway and my cats are now jumping in them because, why not? Why not make noise? Debate often leads to social scientists asking questions about how far inequality should be considered acceptable, and if some degree of inequality is considered acceptable or inevitable. Some kinds of inequality may be more disputed than others, whereas other kinds of inequality may be commonly understood as priorities to address for the sake of social order. For example, the United Nations Children Fund, UNICEF, has stated that countries should place the well-being of children at the top of their responses to the recession. Not only is this moral obligation, but it is in the self-interest of societies. Activity 2. Make a note of your thoughts in response to the following question. Can you think of different examples of how inequalities have developed or changed in different situations, whether at home, work, or in international politics, for instance? Discussion. You may have considered an inequality in relation to gender, such as the inequalities between men and women in the workplace, and how aspects of these have changed over the years. For example, 50 years ago in the UK, it was commonly expected that after marriage, a woman would give up paid work to dedicate herself to domestic work. As commonly held views on gender equality and choice for women have changed during this period, it's now quite common for married women to maintain a role in paid employment. However, debates over equal pay for men and women in the workplace have persisted over this period. You may have also considered inequalities connected to age, such as the reduced mobility of elderly people in their own homes compared to when they were younger. Perhaps certain life changes prompted examples, such as a promotion at work, the arrival of a new baby, retirement, or migration to a different country. Money and inequality. The social science investigation of inequality starts by asking questions based on what, when, where, how, and how much, such as what causes gender inequalities, or how do wealth inequalities change over time? In attempting to address these questions, social scientists look for different sorts of evidence. The different sorts of evidence that social scientists use and the consideration of different sorts of evidence in addressing such questions is something that will be looked at in more detail later on in this block. To start with, though, it is useful to focus on the use of questions and evidence as a starting point for social science investigation. Questions are used by social scientists to try and find information that they can organize and use to help them understand the social world. Evidence is sought and used by social scientists to help them understand and explain the social world. Different sorts of evidence are used to weigh up how well particular arguments and claims appear to hold true. Before we can begin to develop some questions, it will be useful to think a little more about money in relation to inequality and consider what questions are already being asked of the relationship between them. Coins and banknotes as representing money are almost meaningless objects. The value of things that they can be exchanged for are usually much greater than materials from which they are made. Conversely, a pound sterling cannot be exchanged for a pound in a weight of gold. However, what we might call its worth has different meanings and moral values based on cultural and social factors. People might attach different judgments to other people based on how they acquire or spend their money. For example, someone drawing a state pension might be viewed differently by society from a person receiving unemployment benefit, despite the fact that their incomes are both paid from state funds. In this sense, we also need to ask questions about what money means within a society. Michael Sandel, 2013, has expressed concerns about the rapid changes in the role and meaning of money, and increasing commodification of so many areas in our lives, or, to put it another way, the increasing tendency to put a price on things. Sandel is concerned about a drift towards a market society, where almost anything is up for sale, and where even people's bodies and health can be commodified for advertising or experiments. He argued that the significant health and safety risks of such moves means that poor people would be more vulnerable to selling their bodies in such ways to acquire money, perhaps to pay for their studies or basic needs. Another example, he gives concerns of the use of private personnel rather than state military personnel to fight in Afghanistan. This may mean that the poorest in society take risks and become dispensable commodities. If money is to change social practices so significantly, he argues society risks losing many fundamental shared values. For Sandel, these changes are causing an intensification of inequality, which, if allowed to continue, will create a danger of society becoming increasingly and more significantly divided. Sandel claims that inequality, if pushed beyond certain limits, threatens the good life for everybody in a society, and that inequalities are in many ways already having significant impacts on social lives. This is one in particular social science argument about the relationship between money and inequality. Next, we will look at two further social science arguments about money and inequality, showing how different social science arguments can help us to further investigate the social world through the lens of inequality. Saskia Sassen. While the analysis of inequality is commonly concerned with areas of exclusion and those who are excluded, social scientist Saskia Sassen has used the term expulsion to convey the inequalities created through the spatial displacement of people, which she argues are significantly captured through the standard categories such as inequality and poverty. The term expulsion has often been used in relation to the expulsion of people from areas of land to make way for development such as logging enterprises or for factory, road or dam building projects. Also, as particular crops become increasingly valued on a global market, people can experience expulsion to make way for plantations for crops, such as oil palms. Expulsion can also be seen in relation to the building of luxury accommodation developments in previously poor areas of cities, as has occurred in areas of London, for example, Stratford prior to the 2012 Olympic Games, or in London's Docklands during the 1980s and 90s. However, Sassen argues that we are witnessing a wider process even beyond these more obvious forms of expulsion, whereby land acquisition by large international firms and wealthier foreign countries threatens the authority of poorer nations. Ulrich Beck. The German social scientist Ulrich Beck has argued that neither class nor nationality are of great significance in understanding inequality in a contemporary world where persons, groups, populations across nation-state boundaries are significantly affected in their situations and life opportunities by the consequences of the decisions and structures of others. The decisions and structures that Beck refers to relate particularly to inequalities associated with risk, whereby more powerful and rich in society are able to buy their way out of risky environments, as the risks associated with activities such as industrial production sites are moved to other parts of society, and often other parts of the world, the inequalities of risk are accentuated. One such example would be exporting of toxic materials, including nuclear and chemical byproducts. For the rich, the enormous risks associated with economic production are translated into acceptable costs, whereas poor people have no choice and potentially not even the necessary knowledge to protect themselves of the risks to their health and livelihoods. Activity 3. What questions about money might we ask to better understand the inequalities highlighted in these arguments? What evidence can we identify from these arguments about the role of money and the nature of inequalities? Discussion. In all three of the social science arguments outlined above, those of Sandel, Sassen, and Beck, we can see that the inequalities are highlighted in slightly different ways but with a common thread around the relationship between money and inequality. For Sandel, they arise from increasing commodification of aspects of social life, which creates a situation where poor become more vulnerable through a greater need to realize the monetary value of things such as their own bodies. Sassen's observation is similar, but at the scale of land grabbing across geographical and political borders, where it is national sovereignty which becomes the sacrifice for financial gain. For Beck, the story is slightly different in that it is not about the selling off of personal or national interests, but about those that already have financial dominance using it to secure themselves against environmental risks, such as pollution, which are in turn transferred to the poor. Across all of these examples, it seems that inequality is created through a process of buying and selling. So the kind of questions we want to ask about money might include, what is the relationship between money and authority? Is it possible to put a price on risk avoidance? Does financial commodification lead to social division? Each of the three arguments draw on a range of evidence. Although the examples are only lightly touched upon here, the texts themselves provide a great deal of detail and explanation to demonstrate their evidential value. For Sandel, these range from personal healthcare to military personnel. For Sasson, evidence is found in a range of financial transactions involving land purchased by governments and private companies. For Beck, evidence comes from examples of environmental cases studies, such as nuclear accidents or industrial chemical pollution incidents. In conclusion, this section has introduced you to the following key learning areas and skills: the topic of money, its meaning, value, and global influence in making the world go round, as well as its significance and uses in social science study. The theme of inequality, its different forms and ways it may be understood as a module theme in providing a lens for viewing and interpreting the social world from a particular perspective. Social science investigation and the role of questions and evidence in finding out more about the relationship between money and inequality. Okay. So I think that's where we're going to leave it for today, as this video is getting rather long now. We will carry on in the next video with, I think, chapter 3, which is Money as Debt, introducing the theme of rights. So, before we do go, there is one thing that I want to ask you. Obviously, as an ASMR channel and a study channel, I do want to appeal to both sides of the audience. I appreciate that not all ASMR watchers enjoy soft spoken, and I appreciate that not all university students, sorry, I couldn't find the word then, not all university students will appreciate a whispered approach, which is why I went for soft spoken for the first video. So what I'm asking you is to let me know in the comments whether you would like more soft-spoken videos or whether you'd prefer more whispered videos. I think for one part of the topic I will just throw out a whispered video out there and see what comes of that. So yeah, thank you very much for joining today, and I hope this helps you with your studies and getting started. Thank you.